Pakistan. You are welcome. And by our agenda, the first speaker is Sarojini Imran, but she is not with us at the moment. And we can give the floor to Yoni Shapira from Israel, and he is the president of Moreshet Derech Israel Association of Guides, and he is busy with the tourism for 45 years, and more than 10 years he works at TG. Well, you are welcome, dear Yoni Shapira, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. It's 1 minute to 11. Would you want me to start now, or shall we wait a few minutes? I'm ready to go when you tell me.
Подождем, давайте 1 минуту.
У меня на компьютере уже минута второго по Ташкенту. Так. Из спикеров, смотрите, Алена, как перекличку, да, сделаем. Только сейчас Йони Шапира есть, а других что-то спикеров пока я не вижу. Доктор Сагет Садик Салихи, доктор Абдул Хамид, Такамат Сусан и Сараджин Имран пока не подключились.
Shall I start?
Yeah, I think that we can start our meeting today.
Okay, so thank you very much to the hosts that were kind enough to invite me for the International Online Forum of Tourism Travel, and to the World Federation of Tour Guide Association. My name is Yoni Shapira, and I would like to share a screen and just tell me that you see it okay. Is it okay? You're mute, Nigora.
Yes, we can hear and watch your presentation very well.
Okay, so thank you. The topic today is around pilgrimage. So what a better background picture to put than the background of Jerusalem, that in the one shot you could see 3 holy sites to the Muslim world, the Dome of the Rock, the 3rd holiest shrine to Islam. Just to the side of my head, on the right-hand side, you could see, on the left-hand side, you could see 2 black gray domes. That is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the holiest place to Christianity, where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. The Dome of the Rock, obviously, is known for Al-Aqsa, the furthermost mosque, one of the early sites of Islam, and the place where Muhammad ascended from the rock on that mountain to the 7th heaven that gave the 5 decrees of Islam. And on that same mountain, we, the Jews, refer to it as the Temple Mount, stood the Temple of Solomon, the Temple of Herod, the Western Wall, and the holiest place to Judaism. So we are really in the hub of pilgrimage, and that is the topic for today. However, during 2.5 years of COVID, when we were not working, we as Tour Guide Association, and I'm the chairman of the Tour Guide Association of Incoming Tourism, Moreshet Derech, which means Heritage Trail. I'm Israeli. I'm a 9th generation Jerusalemite, and I've been a tour guide for 45 years. And Moreshet Derech, our association, means Heritage Trail. That's the name, Moreshet Derech in Hebrew. And we have over 1,500 tour guides, all dealing with incoming tourism. But for 2 years now, there was no tourism, for more than 2 years. As a matter of fact, from March of 2020, we are starting to see a trickle now from March of 2022. And during that time, I realized that we as incoming tour guides have no work. However, those who did work with domestic tourism, and many of us tried to work in that field, found that there is need. People wanted to get out. They could not travel abroad, so they traveled within the destination, within the countries themselves. And thank God, tour guides had work if they worked in domestic tourism. However, these are two different professions, and this is what I would like to emphasize within our within my presentation today, and put an emphasis on the differences between domestic tourism and incoming tourism. If I go to the classical definition of the UN WTO that the World Federation is a member of, then incoming tourism is a cultural and economic phenomena that entails the movement of people with passports outside of the usual environment, outside of their countries, crossing borders for leisure for not more than one consecutive year and not less than 24 hours. So by definition, a business person who comes for 2-3 days and deals with business is not a tourist. However, he is considered as a visitor because within the few hours that he has time between meetings, he may go on a tour to a site. And this is some of the things that we also do in incoming tourism, work with business people. The domestic visitor, domestic tourism, on the other hand, is a person that travels within his own country. The country could be as small as Israel or Bosnia or Cyprus, can be as big as India or America or China. However, an American traveling from Los Angeles to New York is not considered a tourist because he does not travel with a passport. He is a traveler within his own country. And there is a significant and important distinction between the two that I would like to emphasize as we go along. Within that tourism, we have the economic considerations of the differences. Incoming tourism is bringing foreign currency into our country, into our destination. That means we are an export industry. Like selling any product abroad, we bring in foreign currency, and this generates a revenue to the economy. Domestic tourism is a service, like a restaurant, like a movie, like any other thing we do within our country where we spend our own money in our own country. During COVID, Bill Geist, the president of DMO University from New York, belonging to DMO Pro, put out a white paper redefining tourism, and he defined it as good money is where we bring foreign money, foreign currency into our destination. That is incoming tourism. Neutral money is where the money that we have in our pocket is spent in our destination. And thank God, domestic tourism was alive and well in many places for certain times, not always, during COVID, so they can keep the infrastructure alive. Without it, all tourism would die. So domestic tourism is a very important component, but it's neutral money. It's not bringing in new currency. It's using our own currency within our own economy. And bad money, by his definition, is taking money from our destination and putting it in a different destination. That means travelers from our country travel to another country and develop tourism there. It's a good business for that country. So he defines it from a destination point of view as bad money. I wouldn't use the word bad, but it's definitely taking money out of the destination to a different location. Within the tourism business, the money that we bring in filters down from the tourist guide all the way down to the infrastructure, to the services, to the cab driver, to the laundry, to the food manufacturers, to the hotels, to the destinations, to the people working in the cashiers, to the cleaners, to the helpers, where along this pyramid, we are, the tour guides are the most, in my point of view, incoming tourism, we are among the most important component in taking a destination and turning it into an experience, creating the synergy between the two things, between destination, visiting a place, and between the meaning of that place to the incoming tourist. But as I said, the money filters down to merchandising, to cultural activity, to accommodation, to food and culinary. We have the travel tour operators, we have the transportation, the buses, and so on. So it is important to realize that tourism, incoming tourism, is a very important part of the economy. And in Israel, as far as I know, also in many other countries, 80% of all tourism businesses are small businesses from 1 to 5 people, but they generate over 80% of the economy, of the tourism economy. And I won't go into the statistics of Israel. Before COVID, we have 4.5 million, which is not enough tourists. And then it went to zero in a short time. And everybody, over 250 families, were hurt by that because we couldn't generate tourism. So domestic tourism helps save this, help maintain it. If I look at the work conditions between domestic tour guide and a incoming tour guide, so at least in Israel, I don't know how it is in other countries, although I did travel, the work period, the time we spent with a tourist, we pick them up at the airport for many times if it's not a one-day cruise or business person. We travel with them throughout the country, sometimes for several days. So it can be from a few hours for a businessman up to 2.5, even 3 weeks. I had one family in 2019, 24 days. That's a long time. 24 days traveling a country the size of New Jersey, but it was an amazing experience for them and the children. So it's anywhere from a few hours to a few days for the incoming tourist. A domestic tourist does not do that. He travels with the business people, with the domestic old age homes, school groups, other travel from business, from company workers who are sent on a vacation. And he does it anywhere from a few hours, and in Israel, maximum for 3 days if he travels down south and they have 2 nights in a hotel. So the working condition is totally different. We stay with the tourist day and night. We travel with them. We go to the hotel with them. We take them out in the evening. Incoming tourism stays with the tourist and so on. The domestic tourist guide usually goes home after a day's work, and that is a day occupation for most cases. And if we look at the end result of the tip, which is part of our income, usually incoming tourists get their tip or gratuities, get it in foreign currency, whereas the domestic tour guides gets it in the local currency, which is also a slight difference. However, there is much bigger differences, and that is in the way we work and what we deal with. Incoming tourist guide deals with the hotels, the restaurants, the sites, the shopping, interpreting, negotiating, translating, bridging the cultural gap between the foreigner who is coming to an exotic country. He doesn't know the language, doesn't understand. Sometimes he's afraid because he hears things on the news, doesn't know what's happening. And creating a safe environment for the foreigner to feel and trust the guide, and through that have an experience. We want him to focus on the experience, not on the haggling with the taxi driver or the shop or the marketplace. And as a matter of fact, many times we recommend to them how to pay, what to pay, not to be cheated, not to be taken for granted. And there is a lot of it with incoming tourism. They are perceived as maybe suckers, maybe a source of cheating. Unfortunately, it exists in every country where the tourist comes out disappointed sometimes from shopping or from a taxi service and so on. With the domestic tourist, I don't need to interpret and negotiate and translate because he lives within his own country. He knows the language, he knows the culture, he knows the attitude, he knows how to deal with the shops, he knows how to deal with the sites for paying tickets. He knows how to deal with the taxi drivers. So we are not interpreting and translating and keeping him in a safe environment. He is safe by the fact that he is traveling within his own country and is part of the culture. So it's being an interpreter or being somebody who provides a service, two different things. However, within this, I would like to refer you to the Macau Declaration that in 2013, the World Federation of Tour Guide Association in the annual GA in Macau put a declaration of what is tourism for the World Federation. And I would take only one clause of the incoming tourism. We act as ambassadors of the country and the region and custodian to the area, traditional history and culture, and the environment. However, I would add to that we are, in black, also the interpreters of the religion and the ethnic background, not just the custodian of the area, tradition, and history. We create an interpretation and we create the synergy between what the tourist knows and what the tourist gets. Whereas the local guide, he does not have to be an interpreter. He is a custodian of the area and tradition and culture. He does not have to intervene and translate and explain the religion, the ethnic background, because the visitor is from this area, although he could be a different religion. In Israel, we have Christians, Muslims, Druze, Baha'i. They may be from different religions, but they still live here. They know the politics, they know the area, they know the language, they know how to deal around. So when a family of Druze from the Golan Heights come to visit Jerusalem, nobody has to translate and interpret for them an experience of what is being Jewish. They know it because they live among us, they see us. They celebrate our holidays because it's part of our calendar. And today we are celebrating Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, the beginning of the year, and they all have vacations on the same time. They all know what it is to be in Israel, in a Jewish country, and celebrate how the Jews celebrate, although they do not celebrate personally by not being Jewish. So domestic tour guides are not interpreters to the local population. They don't need to be because the local population doesn't need that interpretation. So what are we looking at? As a matter of fact, 20 years ago or more, already it was defined very clearly that tourism stopped being an activity or a destination built on monuments, shops, cafes, although that is part of the experience. It's all about the people, the tourists, the inspiration and interpretation for them, the experience, and turning it into a passion. Letting them know what they're seeing, letting them understand what they're seeing. Because when a tourist comes to a foreign destination, he can have guidebooks, he can have applications, he can have videos. As a matter of fact, he does a lot of the research beforehand before he decides. And what does he get from all these documents that he can travel around with, or the tablet that he can look? He gets what I call the 6 W's, an inventory of data. What exists where, which is architectural, geographical. Why did it happen? What did the event that took place in this area? Why did it happen? It's historical, it's cultural, it's religious. Why here? Why in this location and not somewhere else? Cultural, social, geopolitical. What happened next? When? When did this event take place in this area? Was it during the Crusader period, during the early Islam, Mamluk, Second Temple period, Roman, Byzantine? Each country with its own heritage and its own background of knowledge, historical and archaeological. And who did it? Who did this event that became such an important destination? Was it some scholar from the 19th century? Was it a crusader that died, like Godfrey Bouillon, that died in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the crusaders that came here in the 11th century and so on? This is about the people, the period, and the context. And when I talk about context, it's also the context of the person who is visiting. What is the context of crusaders to a British visitor? What is a Crusader context to a European, Eastern European visitor, or to a Turkish visitor to the country? There are different narratives, different interpretation, but the context we try and put it into their framework. With domestic tourism, usually you provide the data because the context he knows, he lives here. And when I say here, it can be in any one of your countries. He knows the religion, knows the culture, knows the history, knows the places he visits because he may have been there as a kid. He may have learned about it in school, and you give it a context of where, when, what, why, and who. But you do not necessarily turn it into a context of his beliefs and his religion because he doesn't need that. So therefore, what is the visitor's experience? What do we do? In order to create and change the data and the information that every destination has a lot of, it's all filled with tourist book. We use interpretive tools. In the incoming tourism, we create a cultural, religious, and value framework that brings the tourist to create an emotional motivation toward the site. If just building with history behind it, with architecture, like for instance, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. For a Christian, the minute you put it into the religious context, wow, that's something that's very emotional and he ties to the story, to his set of beliefs. You take it and translate it to his set of beliefs. However, in domestic tourism, on the right-hand side, you use a common memory. And what is a common memory? I and my Muslim neighbor and my Christian neighbor, we have a common memory of what Israel's history is. I don't have to tell him about this memory, which for him, I'll give you a tragic example. We all know where we were when we heard of the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. This was a major shock for the entire population of Israel, be it Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or Druze. There is also international memory. I remember, or you remember, you all remember where you were when you heard about 9/11. This is a memory of consciousness of the entire world. However, there is the memory and consciousness of the local group of the country you're in, because you know the politics, you know the elections, you know the conflicts, you know the tragedies that happened, you know the victories that happened in sport and so on, because you all lived it, you all celebrated it. So for domestic tourism, it's part of his life. You do not have to bring it into a context for what does it mean to him. He knows what it means to him. And you are not the one to tell him differently, because he may be from a different religion and a different set of political views. You will not tell him that he's wrong. However, for the incoming tourism, he has not got a clue. He doesn't understand what the politics, what the events, what the historical, tragic, or great events. And I'm not going to go now into our politics here, which includes a lot of war, a lot of conflict, but also victory, Nobel Prize winners, sport winners, and so on and so forth. Domestic tourism, if you want to give him an experience, an incoming tourism, if you want to give him an experience, you have to create all these things which are part of your history, part of where you are from, put it into context that will fit him, fit his background, his beliefs, his knowledge, his understanding, and his aspiration. So when we look at the visitor's experience, for the incoming tourist, we are bringing a human emotion element to the experience. We fulfill his desires, her desires. The foreign tourist comes with a pack full of expectations, full of aspirations, full of religious, cultural beliefs and values. And it's up to us, the incoming tour guides, to very quickly pick up on who they are, where they are from, what is their background, what is their religion, and how to enhance that religion into context of place and time where we take them. If they go and see a pile of rocks, it's a pile of rocks, it's archaeology. But if we give it an interpretation and put it into historical context, both for the country, And for the tourist, suddenly it'll become a story. It'll become an experience. So to create a personal interaction with history, with archaeology, with music, with art, with anything added, and if on top of it, you also give him shopping experience, culinary experience, hands-on, direct him to photography. This is a good place. This is a good angle. You create an experience that for the incoming tourist, it creates an experience. For the domestic tourist, he will love it. He will love it because suddenly his collective memory, I was here in this site as a kid. Wow, you just gave me the information to put it into context. I love it. Thank you. But he was there. It's his collective memory. He was there in school. He was there when he was with a family on a trip once. But suddenly the guide gives him a lot more information, data. That data is not necessarily relevant to that detail for the incoming tourist. Too much information is too much information. We don't want to overwhelm them with information. We want to put things into context. And contexts are in broad strokes, broad paint of giving them the framework of where they come from and how it ties to where they are when they come to Israel. So if I would summarize the outcome of our tour guide professionalism, for incoming tourism, we create an experience by using interpretation. Whereas for the domestic tourism, we provide the data and information about the site that he's visiting. Which takes me to another motto, which I thought about, and I would like to take the copyright on it. We take the experience for incoming tourism and turn it into a lasting memory. The incoming tourist has not got a clue about what he came to visit. You are turning his experience into a memory that will go for a long way. He will remember that because suddenly it's in context. He may come again because of that. However, for the domestic tourism, you turn a memory that he has because he lives in the country, because he visited the place as a child, because he visited the place with school, because he learned about it. You turn his existing memory into an experience. So it's total two sides of one coin. How do we as tour guides work in presenting the story? As a result of this realization, I do think that these are two separate professions. Incoming tourism and domestic tourism guides are two different professions in the way they work, in what they do, in the experience they give. And I'm not negating one on top of the other. As a matter of fact, if I think about it, the domestic tour guide has to know far more data and information about any given site, because at any given point, somebody from the tour group will say, 1 second, you're telling me this and this about this story. I learned something else in school. Who is right? I remember it because I was during one of the story is different. Don't tell me I know because it's part of my family history. It does not happen with the incoming tourist. For the incoming tourist, he needs the broad strokes. He needs the splash of color. He needs to put it into context of his belief. If he's Christian, if he's Muslim, if he's Druze, is Jewish, whatever it takes, you put it into his frame of reference and you've gained a customer. He will follow you because you turned his experience into a lasting memory. Now, what's written here? I will finish with this. I'm sure you're all reading it. However, this is not what's written because we have to take that little change and make that into our story. So we have an opportunity. I would like, Viola is with us on the among the participants, and Viola Lewis from Scotland is the head of training through the World Federation of Tour Guide Association to create a module of training and the difference between domestic tourism and incoming tourism and give those emphasis to the students that are all tour guides. You're training not new tour guides, but veteran tour guides to realize that it's a different profession, because the more we become professional, the better the experience we can give our customers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your interesting and informative presentation about the process of preparation of guides, and what is domestic tourism and what is incoming tourism. It was really interesting for us. And now I want to ask our auditorium if you have any questions, yes, to Yoni Shapira.
How do I do don't share?
Switch off the join.
I'm trying to find here.
At, in the bottom of the screen, you see.
There we go. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Well,
Friends,
Mazina,
I'm ready to answer any question.
it's really an interesting topic, especially for us, because if you know, we are the scientific research institute, and in tourism development and studying of problems of cultural heritage. And also we have department where we train and retrain guides and tour operators. And indeed, it's very interesting for me how long time you teach you study your tour guides or tour operators. Because we have, for example, 3 months courses, and sometimes people who want to get certificates, they come, and when they hear about this validity for 3 months, they are upset, and they want to do it more quickly than 3 months. And I know from foreign experience that usually in foreign countries, such kind of courses for 2 weeks. They long for 2 weeks, and it's we think that it's very short time. But what about your Israeli experience in preparation of such kind of specialists for tourism industry?
Well, here is where when I did the course in 78, it was a 2-year academic course. 2 years in which we had 3 meetings a week plus 1 full day touring every week from morning to night. And we are a country the size of New Jersey, very small, but we have such a rich heritage of religion, culture, history, archaeology, geography, topography, and so on and so forth. A few years ago, it was reduced to 1 year and less than 1 year, basically with the Ministry of Tourism, that are the ones that certify the guides by the exams, are telling the students, you could study online all the data. All the
Yeah.
information is there. We will teach you the methodology. We will teach you how to make it into a tourism experience. And it's even reduced from that somewhat. So right now, I'm very critical about the curriculum that exists. I think the guys that come out today out of the course, even if they do some apprenticeship, it's not the same quality as the old timers. And it's a pity, because we really are hurting the tourist experience. We want better tourism, and we want tourists to come back, not just a one-time visit. So we have the Ministry of Tourism made it public. That means it's not run by the ministry anymore. It's run by a school of Haifa University School of Tourism that has several branches around the country, and they give the courses to tour operators, which there I think it's under a year, and to tourist guides. The emphasis is on incoming tour guides. However, if you don't speak anything but your own mother tongue, which here it's Hebrew, then you cannot be a incoming tour guide. I must mention, and I did mention at the beginning, that during COVID, domestic tourism gave us an opportunity to guide.
Yeah.
However, I don't know if you realize, but Israel is a country of immigrants, and our incoming tour guides are from Hungary, from France, from Germany, from Italy, from Zimbabwe, from India, from Ethiopia. We have a huge diversity of people speaking in languages of the tourists. So they are not necessarily Israeli by birth or historically grew up in the country. They are immigrants and they speak in all these languages. And it's great. It's a great opportunity because when I go as an Israeli abroad, there are very few places where I can find a guide that guides in Hebrew. That means
Okay.
that will give me my experience as I would like to hear it. Obviously, I go to people who guide in English because I speak also English. But in Israel, the unique thing is that a lot of the incoming tourists get the tour within their own language. Therefore, these tour guides did not and could not participate in domestic tourists during COVID. They could not take an Israeli group and give them the experience that they give their tourists, and therefore many, many of us did not work during COVID, and it was a problem.
Well, thank you very much. Well, what about other questions to
I
Mr.
see a hand raised by Viola.
Viola, please?
Thank you very
Hi,
much.
Viola.
Hello, Yoni, and thank you for mentioning WFTG and giving me a name shake. So thank you also for, if I may make a comment before my question comes in. Thank you, Yoni, for the really structured and clear background on domestic tourism and incoming tourism. I would argue, however, that maybe it's not separate professions, but the tourist guide has a role in both. I mean, we don't want to underestimate domestic tourism. I agree with you 100%. The service we provide in there is completely different. But a tourist guide probably could have a role in both of them. And my question will come on to that in a second. Maybe just a little aspect as well. So thank you also for organizing this Bridge of Friendship online forum, which is a wonderful way of coming together, and maybe an appeal to our listeners to continue coming to WFTJ events, because those topics Yoni talked about, this is something we really talk about online or during our conventions. And as Alushka Ritchie, our president, said right at the beginning, these are times for rethinking. So we definitely have to rethink our role and have to find our new relevance. So it's a wonderfully inspirational event. And now to my question, which is a little bit of a provoke. It's really opened my eyes to that domestic visitors or tourists or domestic, what did you call them, Yoni? Domestic
Travelers.
Okay, domestic travelers. Thank you. Come with their own personal experiences. I find that sometimes incoming visitors come with some myth or some expectations or with some misconceptions. How do you see the role of the tourist guide in that aspect?
It's a good question, Viola, and I think the next month I was asked to talk about objectives in tour guiding, which talks about the ethics. And this is definitely objectives. Objectives, we should not, and nobody pays us. We are not important enough to pay us to hear our personal views. That means we are there to present the spectrum of diversity of the country. Even if the narrative is counter to my narrative, it is relevant. And I should mention that there are other people that have a different narrative to the same event in any country, mostly in areas of conflict. And we know it from Ireland, we know it from Germany, we know it from Israel. And even in the American history, there is periods of conflict. So we have to present the entire spectrum of things. To the domestic traveler, he knows all that. He knows because he hears it in the media, reads about it. He is immersed into the narrative of the people around him, be it from his point of view or the opposite point of view. And there are many other points of view. The incoming tourist comes with many times with disinformation, misinformation, based on media exposure, based on propaganda, based, unfortunately, with Israel, sometimes based on anti-Semitism, a concept of things, a stereotypic type of things. And then my role is to change, giving a paradigm shift. And it works. Through being honest and showing him the spectrum of ideas, some of them fit his misunderstanding, but they fall into that place, into that category, and others give him a different perspective. He learns to trust you. And he learns to trust you and he changes points of view. I've worked with correspondents for Media Central that come to cover stories of conflict. And I've heard enough, don't confuse me with the facts. We've made up our mind. And I confuse them with the facts. And they realize that answers are not black or white. They're not simple. It's a whole array of gray. And I prefer that they go home with many more questions than answers. That is definitely a goal that I put towards people who are working in certain professions. I want them to go back questioning the media they read, questioning the things they see, and understanding that it's not black and white. So we do have a lot of things to deal with when we deal with the tourist and with the domestic tourist, because they may be in a different narrative. Did I answer your question?
Thank you. And more importantly, I hope we made others think. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Yoni Shapira, for your interesting report and your answer for our questions. And thank you. And now I give the floor to our next reporter. And Yiska Harani, she is independent scholar, advisor to the Ministry of Tourism, Israel. Well, are you with us?
Let me tell you, she wrote to me and I contacted Zarina. She could not participate. She's abroad. However, she sent a video presentation. So you should have it and be able to share it.
I can, yes, switch on only your video, yes?
And sound, yeah.
Yeah, I will try just to.
Dear conference
We cannot hear the sound.
Where do Christian pilgrims go in the Holy Land? We tend to think about tourism as divided into different categories. Those who search for the good cuisine, those that search for health tourism, and others. But shouldn't we do the same regarding pilgrims? And not only Muslim pilgrims and Jewish pilgrims and Christian pilgrims. In the world of Christian pilgrimage, we do see that there's a difference. There is a certain demand of a certain group to an itinerary that another group cannot share in the same enthusiasm. In this case, the group that walks along the Via Dolorosa, or those that go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, they all seem to do the same thing. Christian pilgrims following the footsteps of Jesus. Christian pilgrims going to see the life of the man who was also God, the Savior of the world. Does it make sense that all pilgrims will go to the same places and follow the same footsteps of the same Savior? On the one hand, logically, yes, but in reality, that is not what is happening. In the last years of the coronavirus, when churches were closed, down below you see the Milan Cathedral or the Vatican, Rome's St. Peter's Cathedral, and above the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, completely desolate. That was a good time at least to stop and think, how do we now prepare ourselves for our future groups? It was a good time to go for those who were here, and that curfew did not stop them from going, to see, for example, the Church of Nativity, the Grotto of Nativity. But very soon we do remember that back came the pilgrims, and in great numbers. And we have to be alert to the fact that not all of them are going to stand in the same line. Not all of them are going to attend the same churches. Isn't it about time to discuss what do Christians want to see when they come to the Holy Land? I will give a few examples, starting with the north and then going back to Jerusalem and even down to the desert, to show you that different denominations, Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants of the mainline churches, Protestants that are evangelicals, and we can have a long list of the different denominations, but just for the sake of understanding my analysis, I would say there are some places that are trivial to all Christians. For example, Nazareth. There isn't a Christian in the world who hasn't heard the name Nazareth and understands that this is the place where Jesus grew. This is the place where he was educated, where he became from a child a man. It is not the Church of Nativity where he was born. It is not the place of passion, death, and resurrection, Jerusalem. It is the real life of Jesus that happened right here in Nazareth. This very particular church is the Church of Annunciation, where Mary was told by the angel that she will conceive and she will bear a child named Jesus. This is, as you see, a modern church. The inside and the outside clearly tell you that this was rebuilt in the 20th century, but the very modern style indicates it's not an Orthodox one, it's a Catholic church. Do Orthodox go to this church? Do Protestants go to this church? Let's take a look at Capernaum. Capernaum is the place where Jesus started performing his miracles, where he was present with his disciples, preaching, teaching, going to the synagogue. A big and beautiful archaeological compound. And what you see in the center and above is not just a shed, it's actually a very modern church, built again by the Catholics. Would everyone enter the church, or would others that are not Catholics prefer to go to the archaeological site? let's take a look at Mount Beatitudes. A third example of a Christian Catholic church. Mount Beatitude is famous for the place of the Sermon on the Mount, the most important, perhaps, an extended sermon of Jesus about what is expected from the believer. So, who goes where and when? Well, I had a very interesting opportunity once again to see the difference in itineraries when the coronavirus just hit the Holy Land, as it did other places, but in our case, it was quite an exceptional thing to find in the newspapers itineraries of the different groups were in the very, very beginning, before the country was put on hold and was closed to tourism. It was announced where these groups were, because apparently those groups where someone was sick with the coronavirus, everyone had to be aware and check if they were not in contact with this group. It could have been a shopkeeper in the streets of Bethlehem. It could have been a hotel person in any of the hotels. It could be the guard in a certain church, and so on and so forth. So in Israeli newspapers, the list of the different itineraries of the different groups was published, but I took the opportunity to see, in order to find and analyze the difference between these groups and what they were searching for when they came here. For example, on the right-hand side, you see the Italian group walking with the cross in the way of the cross, Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem. In the middle section, you see the Greek Orthodox pilgrims, whose desire was to meet the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem. And on the left, a German evangelical group of pilgrims was actually asking for a mountaintop in order to see the land of the Bible from above. A Korean pilgrim group, what do Koreans want to see? Well, it depends which church they belong to. So I would like to claim in the first place that although people search for the footprints of Jesus, and in this case you see the stone of unction, the stone in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the body of Jesus was laid according to tradition, and people come and rub whatever things that they have on the tomb, on that stone, to get a blessing, take those objects back home now when they are blessed with that blessing of the stone of unction of Jesus. Do all pilgrims do that? Do all pilgrims come in order to kneel and prostrate in front of the tomb of Jesus? Well, again and again I'll say, no. We have to be very much aware of the different needs of the different groups. We have to be aware that some would search for a totally different itinerary. There is one mountaintop that is perhaps the only common denominator to all groups, and that is the Mount of Olives lookout. It is from here that you see Jerusalem, and you can tell the history of three monotheistic religions. You can tell from here the sequence of events of sacred history from the Old Testament to the New Testament. From here you can see the journey of Jesus to Jerusalem, all the way to the place of crucifixion, and afterwards the resurrection and the ascension. So if we're looking at Jerusalem through this map, well, the city, the old city is here, and people would go in the alleys in order to see this church and that church. But here, encircled with red, is a place where all will go in order to see Jerusalem from above. Well, in the case of Jerusalem, most groups are going to go up there. Here is an iconic picture, the Dome of the Rock, the camel, the group, everyone at all with the view of the city, which is the most famous city, perhaps, in the world of Christianity. So, who is going outdoors and who is going indoors? Well, in the case of Orthodox and Catholics, there are those who come specifically on the holidays or the feasts, when there are outdoor processions. And then it is not a mountaintop where you see the view, It is outdoor walking in the footsteps of Jesus, as in the case of the Palm Sunday procession here on the left, or the Via Dolorosa on Good Friday. There are Catholics more and more nowadays who want to feel, for perhaps once in their lifetime, what it is to be like Jesus out there in the desert or in some place of fantastic nature. So here, for example, a Catholic group is requesting and is granted by the priest and whatever, the travel agent, to do a mass in the Judean desert. So Catholics are not necessarily oblivious of nature and viewpoints, but it is not number one on their list. Orthodox, who, as we will hear later, care very little about mountaintops, do go out to the nature when they want to go to the monasteries of the desert, to church for the first monks, to church for the desert fathers. So here again, in the Judean desert, the typical place for an Orthodox group to arrive. Now let's take those places in the Galilee, such as Capernaum, the city where Jesus lived together with Peter and did many things with his disciples. That's the question. In Capernaum, there is not one church, there are actually two churches. If you look again here at this picture, this upper part that you see above is this very modern Catholic church. But you know that this one with the pink domes is more typical to the Orthodox. So to which church do those visitors go? Well, they go accordingly to their denomination, which means that you cannot copy-paste the same itinerary even when you go to the same famous town of Capernaum. And here, going to Nazareth, again, the same thing. If you're a Catholic, naturally you go to this one. If you're an Orthodox, you go to the Nazareth Church of the Orthodox. But here comes the big surprise. What about Protestants? Well, it could be that they are generally culturally inclined and they are not minding going to a church, but quite a few will drop out the churches completely. They will want to go up to a viewpoint in order to learn about the topography of the biblical history, to learn of the geography of the biblical stories. So these groups will not even enter any of the churches. In Capernaum, they will settle with the archaeology. In Nazareth, they will go up to a mountain called the Mountain of Precipice and have the beautiful viewpoint of the Jezreel Valley, and their pastor or their guide be able to read from the different scriptures, be it Old Testament, be it New Testament, about the stories that they know. So Nazareth, the famous city, is really not one spot that everybody visits. If you pull out a card, if you pull out a photograph and you say that is Nazareth, you may find Christian believers who say, but that's not the Nazareth we have visited. Take a look at another example. And the other example is Mount Tabor. Now that is a very distinct mountain, but if you can tell, at the very top, there are churches. And people take the bother of driving up the mountain in order to enter churches that are on the top of the mountain. It is famous because it is the mountain on which the New Testament places the story of the Transfiguration. As a matter of fact, it's not even the New Testament, it is tradition that says that the mountain of the Transfiguration is the same mountain as Mount Tabor mentioned in the Old Testament. What happened according to this icon, you can tell Jesus was transformed. While having Moses and Elijah on both sides, he radiated with beautiful rays of light. And like Moses on Mount Sinai, the words from above came, God saying, you are the one to whom everyone should adhere, everyone should follow you. So this moment of, like Moses being elected or elevated, this story had a lot of importance in Christian traditions, and it bears still today very great significance. So what do you do when you are on Mount Tabor? Which church do you go to? Are you going to the Catholic Church, or would you rather use the Orthodox one? So perhaps the answer is clear. Catholics go here, Orthodox go there. That's wonderful. But what about having the beauty of the mountain that is so beautifully protruding above the landscape? Well, as a matter of fact, it is quite amazing to see that the Orthodox who travel up to the church will enter the church searching for the icon showing the transfiguration, looking at Mount Tabor, not from the top of Mount Tabor, but from the inside of the church. That, as opposed to Protestants, who may go to the Catholic Church. Perhaps they will enter, but just for a very brief moment, and others will not enter, of course, but they will use this big balcony here, overlooking the beauty of the landscape around, and thus it is the same Mount Tabor that is visited in 3 different locations: Orthodox Church, Catholic Church, and the balcony of the Catholic Church, because Mount Tabor is one and the same. There are no misunderstandings about whether it is here or there. Everybody wants to be on the Mount of Transfiguration. The question is where exactly to share your prayer with the place. So if I look at those itineraries that were publicized in the newspapers back in the 2020s, when it was just, the coronavirus was just hitting, so I can see that there are groups who actually put very few churches in their itinerary and rather take visits to Old Testament sites and archaeological sites. So on the left side, you see Hebron, the patriarch's tomb, where Abraham and Sarah and Jacob are buried, and others. And you may say, so is this a Jewish group? No, it's a Christian group. Is this a Muslim group? No, it's a Christian group. But it is a Christian group that would rather, if there is a choice to go to a church or go to the Old Testament sites, would go to the Old Testament sites. Who are those in general? In general, these are the Protestants, especially evangelicals. They also would appreciate highly going to Beersheba, the city of Abraham, where he dug wells, where his offspring Isaac was also wandering around. So these are some of those sites that are not typical at all to Catholic and Orthodox groups. Very rare, if at all, you find them there. But this was certainly on the agenda of the German group and the Korean group. So back then, 2 years ago, they had to check if the guard of Beersheba archaeological site was infected by corona, and exactly he did. If we continue with those groups that I was checking just simply through the newspaper, the Korean and the German groups arrived far down in the desert in a place called Timna Valley. Timna Valley is on the very close to Elat, or the Sinai Peninsula. And down there, not only a beautiful desert view and a location associated with King Solomon, but there's a replica of the Israelite temple, the wandering temple, a temple that was dismantled every time they moved to the next station, and so it went with them for 40 years in the desert. Who is interested in that replica? Who is going all the way out there to Eilat, a place Jesus never visited. Why travel so far away? Well, Jesus never visited Hebron. Remember the patriarch's tomb, the one that we saw before? He never visited Beersheba, and he certainly never visited Eilat on the way down to the Sinai Peninsula. But these groups search for the sacred history from the point of view of landscape, of topography, of geography, from the very beginning of the sacred history, from Abraham, from Moses, and from David's times all the way up to Jesus' days. So it is no surprise that when I look at the itineraries of the different groups, I found them that Protestant and especially evangelical groups go up to the viewpoints. In this case, it'll be up in the north of the country, the Golan Heights. Looking to the distance, they may think where Damascus is, not very far away, and that is the place where St. Paul was. So the viewpoint becomes a holy place, or at least a holy experience, because when you've come to the land, you've come to see the land from above, to understand it, to see the topography of it. I would suggest to all travel agents and tour guides to try and analyze that feeling of those different groups who walk to different places in the same land. What they're interested in is definitely Jesus, walking in his footsteps. But how to understand him is a secret. The secret of planning a proper itinerary. It is not jumping from one church to the other. Make sure that the mountaintops and the landscapes provide you with the land of Jesus, a land that is not built over by Catholics or Orthodox throughout the ages. It is a topography that is there. It is from thousands and millions of years ago and to remain so in the future. So that is all I wanted to share with you, and wishing all the pilgrims a good pilgrimage, whether they go inside the churches and whether they go up to the top of the mountain. Thank you.
Well, now you saw the video presentation from Mrs. And unfortunately, we can give her questions maybe next time. You know that this event is an annual event, and every year we have this friendship bridge. Well, thank you very much. And now I want to give the floor to our next speaker, Sarojini Imran. Are you here? Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Nicola. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good day.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's day in Indonesia or evening?
Yes, it's a day. It's 4 o'clock afternoon in here.
Yeah, okay. I'm very glad to see you here. Now, please, Sirajini Imran from Indonesia. She's the chairwoman of the Center of Study of Tourism Development. And now she will present us her very interesting speech, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Can I start? Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A greeting from Indonesia. Hello, my name is Sarojini, but you can call me just Gini. Yeah, I'm the head of Center of Tourism Development from my faculty, tourism faculty, Pancasila University in Jakarta, Indonesia. So I am really grateful to join this friendship this forum this year, 2022. Yes, I had heard the presenter before me is very serious and good. But today I'm not really want to share so seriously. I just want to share that about the Indonesian pilgrimage tourism and how the tourist perspective from different religious from tourists from different tourism. Yes, can I share?
Yes.
This,
Aha, you have own presentation. Aha.
okay. It's already on slideshow.
Yes, we can see and watch your presentation and hear you very well.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So we know all that pilgrimage tourism is a tour, but the tourists do not generally demand except for the people who have a particular interest. Typically, they are adherents of the same religions as the pilgrimage visited, but are now developed more widely according to the World Tourism Organization. An estimated 300 to 330 million pilgrims visit to world key religious sites every year. So the success of sustainable pilgrimage tourism destination is highly dependent on the management strategies. Mainly the pilgrimage place is managed by governments or by the community engaged in the religious fields. So religious tourism, so also one of the important pillars of buildings of a community without ethnic or racial, religious, and intergroup boundaries. So in Indonesia, we have a variety of pilgrimage tourism attractions because, Indonesia have a diversity of religions and belief held by people. The religious places can be used as tours for tourists, whether in large populations, whereas Indonesian populations is very weak, and 2022 is about 278 million, 552 and 361 people is large, but were almost all of their religious people. So it's in potential for the developments of religious tourism. The many historic buildings or places have a special meaning for religious people can be developed as a religious tourism destination. It is the graphic. How many adherents and Islam is the big ones, yeah? About 86% from the other religions. First of all, I want to show you how this Indonesian cultural diversity. The culture can you see from become the attraction, tourism extraction is a daily life as the tourism potential. You see, this is the paddy terrace in Bali, and you can see that the Balinese people bring offering or offers to their gods. Seems this is like a tourism attraction, but it's really rituals, religion of of their Balinese people. Yeah. In the other culture, if we go to the Java, you see the Rayok is like a parrot here with the figures. This is like a lion or probably lion, the big ones. And the Nias we see from Sumatra Islands. You know, Indonesian have many islands, big islands or small islands, and every island have their cultural so different. Yeah, this is from Java, West Java can play, but we don't know which one is the culture is have the background of the ritual of the regions or just a ritual of cultural. And this art performance also in Bali. Why I give you more of Bali from the others culture, because most of the people from the West or the Europe, they know Bali, but they don't know Indonesia. So I show you many of attraction from Bali. This is Pecak dance. You can see the attraction of Pecak dance, but it is from the beginning is the history is just really about connection with their religions. But now it became a tourism attraction, like dance, only dance to perform for the tourists. And if you like to see in Bali, you can see this is barong barong dance, but actually the barong is have the meaning of religion of Balinese. It's the Hindus. Yes, the positive impact of religious tourism in building harmony of life toward the right educations and religious pluralisms. This is I want to show you that we have many of the place of religions, yeah, for the pray. It is from Aceh. Aceh is placed in North Sumatra. If you see that before in 2005, Aceh gets struck with tsunami, and everything is gone. Only this mosque still stayed there. The name is Baitur Rahman Grand Mosque Aceh. And right now it's become the destination for all tourists to see the mosque, the attraction of the Aceh. And you go into Jakarta city, and you will find that two house of religions. This is Istiqlal Mosque, the big mosque of Indonesia, and the cathedral church are located next to each other, and it had a basement connection road for two displays where the two devotees can visit each other and can take advantage of share a parking area during holidays, big holidays, for its religions. Here. And we also have the Bukit Bantu, Bunaken, Sulawesi. We have the statue of the Jesus, the big one. I think it's the same size or more bigger than Brazil. Brazil have Jesus statue. You know that we are the most, like I said, that Indonesia have the the most of the people are Muslim, but In Indonesia, we can find many of place ritual. The other religions is built. It's no problem. We have a harmony life here. And this is the Besakeh temple in Bali. It's a Hindu sacred place for worship and also provide the place of worship for adherents or of other religions. Such a mosque and church, and in this location, there is no religious fanaticism. Yeah. Every adherents can come here, and they can feel how close to their God. Their God not have to be the Hindu's God, but the sense of place is very make the people feel near to their God. And this we have a Borobudur temple. Borobudur temple is one of the world heritage of Indonesia. This is for the Buddhas. Yeah. The people to get pray here. It's still become a place for prayer, especially for Waisak days, a big day for the Buddhas. The commemorations with is held lively for its adherents. But how does the place of the Borobudur can be meaningful for the others' religion? Can see this place of worship are become the background for the pre-weddings photos, yeah, for followers of other religions. You see the woman is from West Sumatra, and Sumatran is mostly, they are Muslim, and this is from Java. And the other things that what's the tourist interest to go to Borobudur, because in the Waisak times, there are the occasion for releasing lanterns of Buddha's holidays and becoming a tourism attraction for tourists from other religions. This is the other, we have a Prambanan temple. Prambanan is for the Hindus, the adherents. There's is the place everybody knows become a Prambanan jazz occasion, yeah? Events, yeah? And the Prambanan become the background. We have the Pagoda Taman Alam, ya, Lumbini, near Brastagi, Sumatra. We have a big temple here, like the other country. And the last religion we have Konghucu, planting. The temple for religion is come from the Chinese. Okay, so the diversity of traditional ritual in various circles of life, not only for the house of prayer, the buildings, but we see that ritual traditions is one of how the religions have to the meaning of religions, yeah, from the birth, childhood, teenage, wedding, and death. This is for the infants, yeah, for fasting in Aceh. This is the Aceh and most northern tip Sumatra, and then this is Java. They have different ceremony, but all is have a meaning of their religions. In the Bali, we have a flatted teeth for teenage, yeah, Balinese traditional for teenager. Every members of Balinese community have entered puberty women are marked by menstruation, and men are marked by change of voice. So are required to undergo tooth cutting procession, which is the Bali is metatah or mepandes. However, the large cost requires to carry out the ritual make most Balinese people combine it with the wedding ceremony. Yeah, this is, sorry. This is the wedding. You see that wedding from different country, get together. And this is the ritual many. It is from Sumatra, North Sumatra. This is from Java. And this is from West Java. And many have a ritual and they are happy and enjoy with the ceremony and all of the ceremonies connection with the religion too. Yeah. Jadi tribe, this is the Wamena, Papua, Eastern Indonesia. How to they do for the dead people. In Wamena, I become make this mummy to make the mummy. Yeah, and it become the tourism attraction for the others. What it is really meaning ritual for their religions. And Bali, this is, we know that Palabon or Ngaben, cremation for the dead people. Yeah, this is easy that every people come to the street full, all they celebrate together. Even they all have the different religions, they are together unity and the occasion, and this is a really religious occasion, but this doesn't matter. We live together, then nothing's rest is in here. See the tourists from other country, they are all together and the occasion, the ceremony. Visualize in their temple. Okay. So I want to give the conclusion here. The simple conclusion was that the legitimate tourism can be a medium to unite two human beings from various religions, even though at the early stage of worship buildings and ritual events are still seen as mere tourist attraction. But visiting provides a knowledge and insight about other religions and how they carry out their worships. It will make the visitors be sympathetic and respect followers of other religions and create mutual respect. The view of adherents are also developing. If in the past the adherents said your religion is your religions, my religion is my religion, so don't interfere each other. But now the understanding is growing, which is also influenced by the tourism aspect to become like this. Please, it's my pleasure. If you want to know my religion and want to see how we are pray, come to our place of worship. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. This is my presentation. A short presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Sirajini Imran.
You're welcome.
Really interesting and exciting presentation. Well, dear participants, if you have any questions to Ms. Sirajini Imran, you can give your questions, please.
Is the question?
I will check the chat. And no questions in chat too.
It's no problem. If any question you can ask in the group, yeah. I think we still have a group, even though it's the occasional finish. Isn't it?
Well, Miss Sirajini Imran, I know that Indonesia is such kind of country like Uzbekistan in some points of view, because in our country also maybe Islam is the main religion, but we have the representatives of other religions and confessions, and they live together and they respect each other. Yes, and I think that Indonesia also is the same in this multi-religiously with our country.
Yes, I know we have similarly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I think that many tourists think that if it is Indonesia or Uzbekistan, only Islam. But for example, in our country, there are so many cathedrals, so many churches which from not Islam religion but other confessions.
Yeah, we have lots of. Actually, is official. We have Sikh religion, yeah, Sikh religions, but the reality is more than of Sikh religion, because like religion from the cultural is many still keep people keep do their religions, yeah, from the heritage, but why we only have six? Actually, before we only have five, and then once like Confucius, the government allows that become one of the religion in Indonesia. Because we have a lot of Chinese people here, and they have a right to do their religions like this. Okay. But yeah, probably we are not. They maybe the other Muslim countries that you see not really fight for the Muslim, but I think we are doing like messengers told and teach us, yeah, to be appreciate for the others, even though they are not Muslims, and why we should be hate each other. They have a right to do what they do, and we have, and they, if they want to know about us, so give pleasure for them to know what we do. This is what we believe. Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
thank you. And well, Mr. Shapira has a question to you.
Not a question, but a comment, and I
Okay.
really appreciate it. But in recent years, there are more and more tourists from Indonesia who come to Israel as pilgrims. We do not have diplomatic relations with Indonesia, but there are a lot of Muslim groups and Christian groups that arrive here on pilgrimage. And I must say that within our union, there are several guides who studied and learned to speak Indonesian in order not to use a translator, but be able to convey the experience directly in your language. So this is amazing, and we are always happy to see them.
Oh, that's thank you very much. Some people from from Israel to learn Indonesian.
Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Yeah, probably because maybe the language of Indonesia is very simple. We don't have a tense like past tense or simple past tense. All is the same. Only put the the behind is that tomorrow, yesterday, we eat tomorrow, we eat yesterday. So
Well,
the
that's what I was told, that it was an easy language to study, but the
Yeah.
fact that people already 10 years ago and more realized the potential of tourism from Indonesia and studied it, and we sponsored in our union one of the courses in Indonesian, and now we have tour guides in this language, which is great.
It's very great. Thank you very much. Yeah. Nice pricing.
Sorry, yeah, get one moment. Well, thank you very much once more. Any more questions? Спроси у нее, показывает это, нет?
I want to ask that anyone have come to Indonesia before?
Вот это. Спроси. Me not, unfortunately.
So welcome to Indonesia somewhere. Try to know more about Indonesia.
Мою презентацию показывала.
Yeah.
Well, maybe next year. Well, can you see my presentation now on your screens or not?
Yes, I see that.
Well, it is maybe some kind of promotion of tourism in Uzbekistan. I want to represent you our Cathedral of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is in the center of Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan. Cathedral of the Assumption of the Mother of God. The monuments of Zoroastrians we have, and a little bit promotion of our tourism, pilgrimage tourism.
Yeah.
So,
I would like to come there somewhere. Someday I will come to
yeah,
Uzbekistan.
maybe someday you, not only you, but other participants of our bridge also decide to visit our country. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My best regards to our colleagues from University, Pancasila
me too.
University.
Thank you for
Thank you.
patience.
Well, and what about our next speaker? Are you ready? And Takamatsu-san, are you here? Are you with us? Well, Takamatsu-san. But I don't see you in the list of participants.